Welcome, Captain Bringdown here. If you're watching this video, then those of you who've come this far have been officially initiated and are here to follow the path of the Ascended Masters. For those of you that are new, well, please go see Secret Mount Gordo video, Intro to the Mystery, Mystery Explained video 3, and Initiation into the Mysteries 4 and 5. This is video 6 of the series. And the reason why I say go watch it is you're not going to understand any of the context in which I'm talking about, which is why I've spent a lot of time figuring out on how we're going to explain this to you, because if I had outright shown you exactly what it takes to do it, you would literally think that I was completely insane. That's why this is very important. But you see, there's a woman. There's a woman in Grand Theft Auto 5 that... And the more we looked and the more we searched, the more we kept finding her. It almost seemed like we were chasing something that we couldn't quite figure out what was being said. This is why we talked about the Greek aspects of what you need to know. Why the leopard skin is holy and sacred for the priesthood. Why the goddess holding of torches is always shown in triple form. This is very important for you to know. You got to be able to understand everything that Rockstar is showing you. Understand that this is all telling you a secret message. There's a code here. It's all very important. Nobody saw it because you don't understand the symbolic representation of these things, which is why I'm showing you the order in which we're doing it, because we're starting to get into very dangerous grounds here. Secrets, like the pyramids and how this connects to the merging of these three things. Rockstar shows us this. You know, because you got to understand what the pyramids themselves represent. The symbolism being used here. Mount Zoan, by the way, means prostitute, but that's where we get the Star of David, the merging of the two paradigms. What is this message that they keep showing us? What are the two worlds they want us to merge in order to create this hero, this person who's living in the middle world? The symbolism is in our face. It's constantly thrown into us. Who's here? Who's listening? Who's seeing this?
The two seas and the isthmus and the frozen north. Thus, we are safe to love, safe to seek. The greatest wisdom, and the greatest wisdom will be revealed to us.
What is the meaning of the Grand Theft Auto glowing-eyed character between the two orbs? Why do we see this shown in the mysteries? What is this fifth thing? So that's why it's important that we had to do. But like I said, we're reaching into some very sacred territory, very secrets that I have to be very cautious in the way I explain things to you, unfortunately. Like I said, things must be taken care of in a very delicate manner. So please, join me. We were talking about the underworld and Hades. Yes, it's hard to see Hades in Grand Theft Auto 5, but in Red Dead Redemption 2, it is clearly here. We see it. The representation is clear. But the problem is there's not a lot known about Hades. We know all about Zeus, we know all about Poseidon, but there's not much. So there's two ways of going about this, two different paths. There's the Orphic tradition, based on the Orpheus mystery cult, teachings that came from Orpheus himself, and the obsession with Persephone and Orphic and his going out into the underworld to retrieve his lover. And then this guy said this is very strong into the Dionysus, because it was the Maenads of Dionysus who actually ripped him apart and killed him. And this is again goes back to why Hades is the god of the Elysian fields. But then there's the other tradition where we see Tartarus, the souls being tormented. And this is where we see the titans that ripped at the belly of Rhea, where Sisyphus is rolling a boulder for all eternity up a mountain. But what we know for sure is that he was a very faithful person. There was very strong symbolism, but definitely he just wanted to be left alone. But he is god of caves, gods of the underworld, darkness, cool. And this is where people don't realize why Pluto was a great choice. The Roman equivalent to Hades is because it was so far away. It obviously was the realm of Hades. And that's why. But anything that came from the ground, anything that came from, was known as Cthulhian. So anything below the ground was the realm of Hades. Anything above the ground was the realm of Poseidon, and the sky was Zeus. So what do we know? Well, we know about Cerberus, three-headed dog guarding the gates of Hades. You also, when those who die need to go through the river Styx, need to pay the ferryman Charon. That's what the coins on the eyes are for. We know that he was the god of money, anything like gold or wealth or jewelry, anything that came from the ground. This is why a lot of people see 666 and they're like, oh, he's the devil.
I'm the devil! I'm the devil!
He had a bident staff, or is this horns of the bull? I'll let you decide. Symbol was also the dragon or snake, and either though everybody associates Hades or the devil with fire, it is, in fact, always a cold day in hell. He's Cthulhian. But that's it. There's not a lot known except for some very unique symbolism. He's a very mysterious person as far as who Hades is. And when we think about who went in and out of the realm of Hades, there's Hermes, Mercury, Quicksilver, Supersonic. He was the one who held the caduceus, but he was the one who went freely, usually a messenger between the gods. Everyone else needed a golden branch or golden bough that came in order to enter. His symbolism, in fact, was the snake and death, but there's also a woman, a maiden, a kidnapped girl. That's what's important. And where this ties into the Elysian mystery cult and the rite of passages based on of the stories of Persephone and Hades, and of course the Earth Mother, which is why this is entitled The Goddess, and we start going into all the representations of the goddess herself. These depictions are always shown as her being pregnant, full, round. Everywhere we see this, she was that's why she's known as Mother Earth. That's why the mother is the oldest depiction of the goddess herself. Mount Gordo, fat, thick, round, robust, rotund. We think about the mother and the mother's milk.
You know, mammal comes from breast, the giving power of the mother, the nurturing breast.
We see a strong representation of this in Grand Theft Auto 5. We see a picture that would look like two breasts-like things. Well, this is actually in Grand Theft Auto 5. And the name of the place is the Bristols, which actually means breast itself. And this is located in the West 400 Lycian Southwest Docks. Interesting. And we find that even the mother of Red Dead Redemption 2 is buried southwest of the Elysian Fields.
No.
Interesting.
Wow. Sorry, Mrs. M.
She's queen of the household, the mother that stays home. But then there are other representations that are not just the mother, but also the maiden as well, the young virgin, the young girl. Then you also get the old crone, the person who's past her prime. Well, this mother is the one that gave us grain, that gave us agriculture. And like I said, always shown in versions of 3, which also goes to the 3 sisters, other versions that we see, and even in Red Dead Redemption. But you also got to know that there's also the daughters of these gods.
I was out in the fields. I can hunt, carry a knife, or use a gun.
They were warriors. They were fighters.
Skin this fat old coot and serve
Gods
it
of
for
war,
dinner.
cannibalism, and fish, and flowers. And this is why symbolism is so hard, because it just keeps going, keeps interchanging. This is the Queen of Cups, Queen of Hearts. So yes, she's a pyramid. Yes, she's shown in triple form, but she's also a 5-pointed star. She's also an 8-pointed star. And when we look at the oldest civilizations, we find 8-pointed star. Well, and the warrior goddess, the war god of fertility and love, is Ishtar, or Inanni, always shown with two lions. She was also associated with Friday, the Venus, the planet Venus. Even though doves were the symbols for her, these were also the symbols for Aphrodite as well. And then we get to see mirrors and doves and cupids. All these things are again associated with Venus. She was born out of the castrated froth of the sea. That was Uranus. We know her as born out of the oyster shell, like bubbly water seltzer. So then we see all of a sudden she's turned into a fish goddess, a water goddess. We see the cherubs, the Cupid, or Eros in the Roman equivalent to Cupid, also being of love. So here we see green, white, and red in the symbol of 5 of Venus, star of Venus. She was married to Hephaestus. The Roman equivalent was Vulcan. He was the blacksmith of the gods. He was faithful to her, but she was cheating on him with Ares. This then goes back to the union of them two being trapped forever. Then in alchemical form, this is Hermes and Aphrodite. Okay, at this point you should have a general understanding of symbolic representation of the goddess and all, how there are many, many different forms. Like, do you see, now that you see it, you should be able to notice that as you go through the game, these places are everywhere. Look, an upside down golden pyramid for her necklace. So you start to notice that, oh, wait a minute, it's kind of interesting that these images pop up over and over and over again. But nevertheless, what's most important here is, what does this all have to do with Mount Gordo? Like, you have no idea how deep this actually goes. This is crazy. Everywhere you look, once you understand the representation, you start to see it. Then you realize that there's a hidden world here. Then you looked at Mount Gordo and you realize that this is in fact the goddess herself. So let me tell you a simple truth here.
But first, you must wear your medal and your attire and run 5 miles through the desert. Kiflom.
There's another goddess, a wandering goddess. And this goes back into the abduction of Hades and how he got his wife. One morning he saw Persephone picking flowers, and he kidnapped her and took her away, and her mother Demeter searched for a long time searching for her, and ended up in a spring where she met some royal family. Now Inanni does the same thing. Ishtar, she ends up going to the underworld. And even when we talk about a lot of these stories, and this is why nobody understood, why is this guy searching for Gavin?
One morning,
look,
I just woke
up.
He wasn't there.
He just wasn't there. Someone must have taken him, just like Persephone and Hades.
He just left.
How is this guy tied to anything to do with the goddess? I don't know. It's not like he's covered in all the symbols. This is what I'm talking about. Nobody saw the significance, so nobody understood what these things were. Now that you know, this makes sense, according to the Greek mysteries. So let's talk about the story of this place, mother and her 2 kids because of the father. Zeus messed with Leto, Hera got mad, look, there's satyrs, there's Pan, there's Python. Artemis was the firstborn. She had to wander around till she found a island where she could give birth to them. Artemis, goddess, cypress tree, was sacred to her. She was a huntress. She was a moon goddess. The crescent moon.
Now
was
the Thalas fly the colors of the
boar was
Los
sacred
Santos
to
panic,
her.
or the boars.
Where we get the word panic is
because they are the bruise on the face of this
drives
city.
people into a panic. Her brother was Apollo, the sun god, wore the chariot. He took over from Helios. He was the god of music. Here we see something crazy. We see snakes, doves, flowers, triple form, but we see the sun and the moon put together. It's Artemis and Apollo. Again, this merging of the 2 things on Sunday, of course. She was madly in love with Orion, the hunter who swore to kill every animal on the earth and was tricked by Apollo into killing him. Callisto was tricked by Zeus and was hunted by Artemis, and this is where we get Ursa Major and Minor. Since we're on the subject, Io was having an affair with Zeus and was turned into a cow to hide her from Hera. This is why the peacock is sacred to Hera, because that's the multi-eyed head of Argus. Now, we know that this is, in fact, Hera. She talks about how time is a bastard, being married to bastards, the real ones. Time is Kronos, so that means Zeus not having a father makes him a bastard. We know she was the goddess of weddings. Oh look, wedlock, hugely overrated. See, and that's what you gotta understand. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things pointing into the direction they want us to see. It's insane when you understand the symbolism. You can see how all these things correlate to meaning who this person is. And it's like, are you listening? Do you see? And that's what makes this a code. So anyway, let's get back to our Artemis. Anybody who caught her and her maidens in the forest, she turned them into a deer and hunted them down ruthlessly. She was the goddess of the wild women, the women who lived in the forest by themselves, like the old hermit woman over there, Hanging Dog Ranch over by the Devil Cave. These are the people who are considered the witches, like Calypso on her island, who, with sorcery and song, she had caught Odysseus. We know this is Odysseus. Oh look, a Greek phalanx.
Strangely helpful Yankees
Who,
about
what,
the place.
what was he trying to get to? His beloved Penelope,
Penelope.
who could never reach.
Love
Yeah,
tends
this
to
is
be
the story of the
complicated.
Odyssey. Here we see Maya, the Indian goddess of magic, and they even have the 3 cobra rites, the sacred to her. It's insane. So, but let's go to talking about Isis and how she is the widow, the sacred widow, and how this correlates with the Virgin Mary. And this is where we get into dangerous ground here, where how this is related to Christianity and also what we call the pagan myths. So the child or God-man would be Christ, or what we would call Horus. This goes back to the first pharaoh, Osiris. Osiris was tricked at a party to get into a coffin and was trapped by his brother Set. See, where the reason why it's called sunset, because when the sun goes at night, it dies into the west. It's westing. So this is why Devin Weston, interesting that he's on the west side of the island.
Wait, hear me
and
out!
is trapped into a coffin, just like Osiris. Anyway, so then Osiris is pushed into the river. This is where Pan goes into a panic, and this is what we call the descent. This could also be Persephone descending into the underworld. Goddess then goes wandering, searching for her. We go into the wandering stage, trying to find her, and this is when the earth is dead. Nothing is growing because the mother goddess is gone. So then you realize this, and you're like, oh, this makes sense. We know what this is all about, why he's endlessly wandering the earth looking for his companion. Yeah, makes sense now. Duh, doesn't it? So the goddesses ends up finding a bunch of maidens hanging out by a pool. Goddess is always disguised as an old hag or a crone. They show her an obscene gesture and makes her laugh. All the wandering goddesses stories have this exact same story. Turns out they were nursemaids in the royal house, the royal family. So then she comes in as a nursemaid because the prince and the golden child is in trouble. Something's wrong. She's sick. So she finds out that her husband is in fact a pillar being used in the palace, the royal court. And so she then starts turning into a bird crying around this, as a swallow specifically. And the whole time she's taking this prince and she's trying to burn away his humanity, making him immortal into a cauldron. They find this out, they try to put a stop to her. She reveals which she's the goddess, and even though he's not immortal, she's then going to teach him the rights of agriculture. This is how agriculture is passed from the goddess to this golden child, this prince. And what's important about this golden child is that he is synonymous. His name is close to the spelling of Bacchus, which is why he's synonymous with Bacchus and Dionysus later on, which we will get more into Dionysus, and he's always riding a leopard. It was sacred to Dionysus, so only high-level priests and those in the mysteries would wear a leopard skin. So anyway, Set finds Osiris again, angrily cuts him into a lot of pieces, feeds him to a hybridized animal creature known as Typhon, and spreads them throughout Egypt. And this is why all the pieces of the alien parts and all these things, and even the clues left for the murder mystery, are spread throughout the place. This is a representation of Osiris. Now, how can I go so far as to say that? Well, because even when you solve the murder mystery, the person telling you the story is actually behind grapevines, which is sacred to Dionysus. So then this is when Isis again turns into a little bird with her sisters. They go around and put together all the body pieces of Osiris Dionysus. This is with the mummification funeral rites. They can't find everything but his penis, so they can make a golden one. This is how they create Horus, the golden child, created out of that virgin birth. This is why she's the widow. He is the eye of the bird of prey, brings truth to life, removes the dark and the evil from our hearts. He's the Hawkeye. This is the eye in the pyramid. This is the illuminated eye. He is the sun. This is why they call him the Son of God. This is why the all-seeing eye will always be a representation of the sun itself. And then we think about the Nordic tradition, we see representation here of Odin. Odin was another one-eyed god. He plucked his own eye out, hung himself upside down from a tree in order to achieve ultimate wisdom. See, a lot of these gods are interchangeable. And either though we look at Jesus, we look at Horus, we look at Odin, and one thing that ties them all together is they were all crucified. But let's move on how these are the sons. So Ra, which was the scarab, was sacred to Ra. And this is where Ra and Horus become interchangeable. They're both the same thing. What's important is you know that the sun and the moon is the eyes of the all-seeing God. Okay, so we look at the other Orion constellation was Osiris to the Egyptians. We look at the Sirius, Isis, or Dog Star, Canis Major, that is Isis to the Egyptians. So we see how these constellations become, fused into these gods. She was the patron saint of sailors. She was known as the Liberator. She was known as the Redeemer. We're talking about Isis still. And this is where we find the correlation between the Christianity's Virgin Mary. We see Archangel, we see her, and how St. Bridget's the Virgin Mary, or the goddess of the Celts. We see Saint Fiacre, who is also a male saint but shown in triple form, who also started a church based on the Virgin Mary, or Lady of Guadalupe. And then we also look at Saint Alfonso, who also started the first redemption church. Now, some of you might be saying to yourself right now, Captain, hold on there. Did you just correlate two random spray paint art and put it together? Like, what are you doing here? Correlation is not causation. So, are you doubting me?
Doubting is the pathway to believing for non-objectionable persons. The literature is very clear about that.
Correlation is not causation. What does that mean? That means just because we think something correlates doesn't mean it's the cause. And that's why you must realize that here, everyone at the Ascended Masters, we live by this rule. We don't show you all the silly things, all the silly ideas and theories that we have unless we find more than one correlation. So everything that we show you is what Rockstar shows us the correlation. Every time we see Alfonso, immediately we see the Virgin Mary. Therefore, they're forcing the correlation on us.
In this instance, when he puts it like that, it makes sense.
Ignorance is the true meaning of darkness. We are here to shed light to all of you. There are 7 of us in total, and we all talk amongst each other, and we're all exploring. We're looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb, looking at every little detail, using the keys that we know about ancient symbolism, using the constant symbols of duality, understanding the symbols, why we see the number 4 all the time, looking, wow, how does this have to do with the significance of time? Why is this such a big deal? You start to see that it's every little piece is pointing in the same direction. There's a woman here. Why is there flowers with Lady M? You start to see the crescent moon. You start to see the colors. You start to see the eye. It's constantly thrown in our face. The mother is everywhere. But not just the single representation, multiple representations. Every representation throughout time is here. And they say things. They do things. There's little details, like the colors, like the symbols you see on them, like the flowers and the 7 deadly sins, the crescent moon jewelry, green, red, all the time. Once you start to see this and you recognize that this is based off of ancient symbolism, you start to see clearly. And it's not just one, it's multiple things. Multiple things. So then now the hardest part is, do you remember everything that you've learned? Can you see it? So here, let me show you a great example here of how we look at this world. We look at the meaning of words, like we look at Wildman. Wildman, well, you look that up and you'll find that there's a cancer named after Wildman. We come over here to palmistry. We know she's a goddess of magic. Oh, look, the crescent moon. Oh, look, the palm and eye. We know that Isis and these goddesses are even symbols of the Virgin Mary. They have to do with beggars. They were the saviors, the redeemers. Here we see a whole building colored green, number 72. We're not going to get into the 72 names of God today. But here we find a beggar standing next to an all-purple building, Galerie Laureate. Well, what do we see across the street? On to this side, we see the rose, a white building with a rose, which we know the rose and white rose in particular was representation of the ancient goddess Ishtar. Oh, look, there's a lion. Remember, Ishtar's always shown with lions. 7 and 3. You'll always see 7 and 3. Add them together, you get the number 10. This is also huge. We'll see it everywhere there's a representation of the goddess. On this side, we see a jewelry shop. Interesting. Now, what's inside this building? Let's see. Oh, look. There's a flower. Interesting. We know flower is a symbol. Checkered floor. Symbol of duality. Huh. So we got a lion. We got a white rose. Purple room. Checkered floor. What do we come to? We come to a beautiful flower garden with a light. It means it'll be lit up at night as well. And here we see a symbol of a goddess coming out of a shell. Now, immediately you would say that could be Aphrodite / Venus, but we also see dolphins, which we know are a symbol of Dolphinius. Now, what's on the other side of the street? Well, we see Café Marquant, which is the French equivalent used in Dauphine, or Dauphine, which also stands for dolphin. We look at Heliar, which is a name, a flower shop. Well, Heliar with an O is Indian for where the soul resides on earth. And Mandante is the female version of what means white protector, holy protector. Yeah, but the female version of that. And here we see fannies, which we know is the butt. A big butt. Ladies' tees and corsets. So wait a minute. We've got all these symbols all pointing to one thing. A goddess. The afterlife. Interesting. Look at another. Here's a guy who lost everything because of slavery abolished, living in Eris Fields. Well, who is Eris? Eris was the Greek equivalent of Discordia. So here's a guy whose life is in complete disarray, in complete discord, living on the fields of Eris. That's pretty exact in interpretation there. This is a nice example of correlations, not causation, and how we look at everything very thoroughly as well. Here's a random event outside of Strawberry where a man fell off the cliff. Tells us he's from the cabin up the way there. Okay, so we gotta go check the cabin. Let's go check what's on the body. Interesting that he's on Monte's Rest, and Lenora View is the house that he's from. Lenora is a character from Edgar Allan Poe, which is immediately what one of us thought, because we also see Annabelle, being Dutch's girlfriend, is also dead. Lenora was a dead girl that he was in love with. So again, we see this depiction. We don't immediately correlate it. But here we see a picture. He's got a bride. So this guy was leaving, and he's got a bride picture. So now let's go check this house. Interesting, the color of the house. Almost like a purplish blue. Now, either though this is a widow, either though we see Lenora, immediately we thought it has to be the widow Isis. But remember, correlation is not causation. There's two things to pick up here. There's a letter in front of a basket of flowers. And then you read the letter, and we can assume that he was on his way to pick up his beautiful wife, which then at her mother's house. Notice it says that too. So now we see a letter saying he's going to pick up his widow bride at her mother's house. We see Lenora, which is a woman that was died in one of Edgar Allan Poe's story. We see a basket of flowers, and guess what? It's a perfect sparrow carcass here, and symbol for Isis herself. And every ascended master who's come here and done this mission, you will find a perfect sparrow carcass. So you see, it's not one correlation. It's many correlations that we come to the conclusions when we see this stuff. This next one is a prime example of how hard our work is. We see bishops, which we know is related to Catholicism. But what it says on the sign is Old Yeller. All the flavor without the backbone. Well, now here's where we have to get into what does this mean. Well, slang or old backbone is an old saying. If someone's got no backbone, that means they're a coward. So all the flavor without the backbone. So it's the flavor of courage without the courage. Again, we see Old Yeller. What's Old Yeller? Old Yeller is a book written a long time ago about a dog. And if you look at all the examples that they say about Old Yeller, they see that in fact it is about courage. So then we look around and we try to see, well, who are we talking about here? Who's a bishop, the Old Yeller? And why is it a big deal that he was brave? So then we look all around here. Like, what's around here? We see nothing significant at all. And this is what makes the job really hard, is because is it significant? Is it not significant? Is there some joke that we're missing here? So it took us a little bit of time to figure this one out. But we noticed that when you're at Franklin's house looking in this direction, you see Timmy's flower shop in direct correlation next to Bishop's chicken. And when we look at it closely from this position, we also see Vato, we see the bull, fire, we see a woman in the background, fame or shame, hookah palace, but we also see Timmy's flowers. So now, doing what we know, who was Timothy? How does that do with Catholicism? We look at the story as saying Timothy. It turns out he was an 80-year-old bishop that's canonized because he died trying to stop a procession of pagans worshiping the goddess Diana by praying in front of them to stop them. So Old Yeller makes sense. That's right. Procession of Diana. You remember the goddess that went looking for her missing daughter? Interesting that here we see an example of a bishop that died trying to stop that. So you start to see all these kidnapped people have a symbol related to something with the goddess. Even when we look at Emerald Ranch, the color green, here we see a woman who's not allowed to leave the house, just like Persephone. Why is this here? Because they did not like what they see. They took the clay and they molded the world to what they knew it could be. The creators created their own world. And this world, both these worlds, are dedicated to the ancient goddess of ancient time. You gotta understand what's being said here.
This is Chelonia. We are all
This is the perfect world created by Rockstar. They want you to see all the messages here. Or maybe they don't want you to see it. That's the problem, is that once you understand the symbolism, what this has to do with the ancient goddess and their representation, the eye in the sky, the all-seeing eye, what this has to do with their obsession with the sun and the setting of the sun. And a lot of people are digging in the wrong place, and they don't want to hear new ideas. They want to keep digging, but we're not giving up on you. We're here to share this secret knowledge with you. This is wisdom that you can take to real life, apply it in your world. Remember, this is secret wisdom reserved for very secret groups, and they do not forgive those who share this knowledge. That's why everything I've told you is very specific. There's a lot of things I'm not telling you, but I know you want the truth. I know if you're here, you've been searching. You're looking for it. But remember, it's your choice. You choose to listen to us, but remember, you may also choose to remain innocent of this knowledge, and that's your choice.
Sometimes, sir, the innocent are the damned.
That is truth. Hear it. And weep.
Keep searching, my friends. Till next time, Captain Bringdown out.